Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. As-salatu was-salam ala Muhammadin wa alihi tayyibin tahirin. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilman. So, assalamu alaikum everyone. Today, the title for our reflection is Be Mindful of What You Consume, and this is from chapter 80, which is Surah Abasa, verse 24. So yesterday we started talking about eating of the good things. Remember, we talked about how, halal is kind of the minimum requirement, but what the Quran expects of us is to eat what is tayyib. So today, inshallah, let us reflect a little bit deeper on what we consume. So in verse 24 of chapter 80, which is Surah Abasa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلْيَنْظُرِ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَّا تَعَامِهِ. Let man look to his food. So this short but very profound verse from Surah Abasa gives us an invitation to mindfulness in what we consume. Scholars explain that this verse means that we reflect and contemplate on the vital elements and wonderful structure of the natural world and the nourishment which it facilitates. When we do that, it should lead us to think about the Creator who has created this system that gives us this nourishment and this sustenance. So while the apparent and first meaning of this verse is of course about bodily food, scholars explain that the soul's sustenance can be analogically understood from it. Since man is a combination of soul and body, just as his body needs bodily food, so his soul requires spiritual sustenance as well. So while on the surface the verse refers to physical food, the wisdom embedded in these words extends far beyond nutrition. It calls us to examine not only what we put in our bodies, but also what we feed our minds and our souls. In an age where consumption is not just about eating, but also about what we read, we watch, we listen to, and engage with, this verse prompts us to reflect. What are we really consuming? So Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam, for the commentary of this verse, says, be careful from where and from whom you get your information. Again, furthering this idea that it means much more than simply the food that we eat. We live in an era where information is so readily available, often bombarding it before we have a chance to filter it or to process it. It is said that we consume more input in a week than our ancestors did in their entire lives. We consume more input in a week than our ancestors did in their entire lives. It is not surprising that so many of us feel so overwhelmed and burnt out with all of this non-stop information. Social media, news outlets, digital platforms all provide us with a constant stream of content, and it comes at a much faster rate than we can process it. For this reason, digital media often bypasses our cognitive centers and goes straight to our unconscious brain. This comes from research that was done about TV, which seems ages ago, which was maybe about 30 years ago, that the research was done that when children watch TV, for example, it is different than reading a book. And when they're watching things on a screen, it bypasses their thinking brain and it goes straight into their unconscious mind. So here is the issue. So much of the content that we consume is designed, to get likes and to share and to create headlines, right? And therefore it's designed to provoke fear or anger or anxiety. It is meant to create a strong response in us. And the rise of doomscrolling. Do you know what doomscrolling is? This is something that we do so mindlessly. For example, late at night on Instagram, we go there maybe to check something, and then we find a long time has passed and we are getting more and more depressed, and we just keep scrolling, and we keep, something in us tells us to stop, but we just cannot, right? So the doom scrolling, which is the habitual consumption of negative news on social media, has been linked to increased stress and anxiety and even depression. And we can feel this, we don't even need to read any research, next time you are doom scrolling, if you are, if that is something that you do. Not all of us are so addicted, but if that is, just check in with yourself and see how it makes you feel, right? And so many studies in psychology highlight that repeated exposure to distressing content triggers a chronic stress response, which means that we have this low-lying inflammation in our body, stress in our body, making us more prone to emotional exhaustion and, of course, decreased well-being. If we constantly feed our minds with negativity, it shapes our worldview. It fosters cynicism and lack of trust. It also diminishes our capacity for hope. So just as unhealthy food weakens the body, an unhealthy media diet weakens the soul. So Imam Ali alayhi salam, says it best. He says the heart gets tired just as the body gets tired. So look for beautiful wisdom for it. In other words, revive our hearts. Give us nourishment by consuming, inspirational content. In a sense, our social media feed is our mental fridge. Just as a person's fridge tells a story about their physical health, what they prioritize, how they nourish themselves, and their relationship with food, right? So if you open your fridge and it's full of healthy stuff, it's full of salads and vegetables and fruits, it tells a story about you, tells you what you prioritize and what you eat, right? Similarly, our social media feed reflects our mental and spiritual consumption. If our timeline is filled with negativity, with gossip, with materialism, just feed after feed of the latest fashion, of what you can buy, or vulgarity, then this is what we are feeding our inner selves. This is our fridge from what we are consuming, what we are ingesting. On the other hand, a curated feed with uplifting reminders, with beneficial knowledge, with sources of inspiration, it strengthens our mental and spiritual well-being, of course, in small doses as well, right? So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ advised that the example of a good companion and a bad companion is like that of a seller of musk and the blacksmith's bellows. The seller of musk will offer you a good scent, whereas the bellows will either burn your clothes or fill your lungs with toxic smoke. In other words, who we surround ourselves with, they are going to have an impact on us. People are like perfume. This hadith tells us that if we are amongst, if we go into a room with good perfume, it comes on our body, it gets into our hair, and we smell like that. And similarly, many of us don't go to blacksmiths probably anymore, but we all have experienced when we are cooking something very strong and the smell will just not leave us, right? Or if we go into an Indian restaurant and we bring home the smell with us, right? So similarly, our digital companions, which is our social media algorithms, right? Act similarly. Social media algorithms are what? They learn very quickly what you engage with. They learn what you look at. They learn what you engage with. They learn what you like, what you share, what you comment on. And then they give you more and more content like that. All of us have experienced even thinking about stuff or talking about something with someone else. And we know that our phones are listening and our social media feeds will give us ads on that, right? I mean, billions of dollars are actually spent on making sure that we are kind of the product, right? So what we consume and what we look at and what we listen to, it either uplifts us or it drains us. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, are we engaging with content that elevates our hearts and minds, or are we allowing ourselves to be consumed by a vortex of negativity, of materialism, of just wasted time, right? So beyond what we see and read, what we listen to, of course, has a profound impact on our souls. Music, podcasts, and conversations is all food that we are feeding our minds and our souls, and they contribute to our inner state. There is so much prevalence of vulgarity, immorality, and heedlessness in modern entertainment, and it affects our mindset in ways that we may not even realize, which we will inshallah talk about more tomorrow. And it's hard pressed, even social media posts, right? When they have music in the background, sometimes if the speaker is on, it is stunning at the kind of words that are being used in these short clips. So, if you are a person who shares content, please be mindful of the words that are accompanying the social media post, right? Um, and studies in neuroscience show that repeated exposure to explicit and negative content, it alters our brain chemistry, reinforcing patterns of thought that or behavior that can be so difficult to break. And it's wise for us to remember a hadith from Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam when he said, "When a heart is devoid of the remembrance of Allah, it is like a ruined house." So the question to ask is, are we filling our minds with words and sounds that build or that ruin our inner homes? So how do we curate a healthier mental and spiritual diet? To be conscious of what we consume means taking active steps to filter, select, and nourish ourselves with that which benefits us. When we are beginning to eat mindfully, when we vow to take care of our bodies, the first thing we do is we stop putting toxins in our fridge, right? Because if they're there, that's what we're going to eat. So, one of the, some of the practical ways, and the first one is to audit your social media feed. We have to unfollow accounts that spread negativity and toxicity that are just completely, again, it's really lovely. Instagram is a place, it's visually pleasing, the new fashions and jewelry, architecture, whatever you're interested in, it comes there, right? But we have to see how much, and if that's all, for example, if all we're doing is following fashion, then obviously it's going to impact us, because we know about materialism that there's no end to it, right? So we have to, make sure that we also have content that inspires, that educates, and that uplifts us. We have to limit exposure to bad news. Of course, we have to stay informed, but we do have to set boundaries. And choosing quality over quantity when consuming news is a very good idea. It's also not a good idea to consume news just before bed. Now, one of the things, I used to be really against, um, too much of social media. And then, since the genocide, since there is so much, curtailing of news in Western media, this is a very important role that news on social media plays, right? This is how we are getting news. So absolutely, we have to stay informed. And we still have to be mindful. We still follow reputable journalists who are tried and true, who are doing good work, right? Rather than just following inflammatory stuff, which does nothing except, makes us panic, right? So we also, of course, have to be mindful of what we listen to. We have to understand that, again, when we're doing stuff and there is stuff playing in the background, when we're multitasking, what is playing in the background is getting into our unconscious mind. Make no mistake about it. So again, being careful of what you're choosing to put inside to consume. So of course, even if your feed is full of inspirational content, right, we still have to set digital boundaries. We have to reduce screen time, take break from social media, and engage in real world conversations. Why? Because even if we were to overeat healthy food, even if we were consuming the best of oils and lots of vegetables and good fats and good protein and all of that, but if we were to overeat to an extent that went beyond our nutrition needs, we would still gain weight, we would still be unhealthy. Similarly, even if we are doing the best of things on social media, we still have to set boundaries, because at the end of it, when we are engaging on screens, what we're not doing is engaging in real life, right? We are immersed in our virtual worlds. So, even if we think that we are doing the best of things, we still have to put boundaries on it. And lastly, engage with nature and real life connections. Spiritual and mental nourishment comes not just from avoiding harm, but actively engaging with the good, which is through connecting with nature, with each other in real time, and in meaningful discussions, right? These are kind of the vitamins that add to our mental and emotional well being. So, the Quranic wisdom embedded in this very short phrase, let man look at his food, is a timeless reminder that what we consume physically, mentally, and spiritually shapes who we become. Just as a healthy diet leads to a strong body, a healthy consumption of media, of conversations, and of thoughts leads to a resilient soul. So may we all be mindful of what we feed ourselves and make choices that nourish rather than deplete us. Ameen, summa ameen.